It was a sweltering afternoon in Lagos when Toyosi stepped out of the car, her father's shiny new Toyota humming softly before shutting off completely. She hesitated, gripping the hem of her yellow skirt as her eyes traveled up to the tall gates of Rosewood Girls Academy. The emblem of the school, a roaring lion, stood boldly against the crisp white paint of the entrance. She swallowed hard. This was her new school, her new home away from home. Toyosi, whose name meant, "What rejoicing in the Lord," had spent her entire life in Ibadan as the only child and cherished joy of her Yoruba family. With dark skin that gleamed in the sun like polished ebony, she was often told she resembled her grandmother in both beauty and mannerisms. Her parents doted on her father especially, raising her with discipline and pride. But his recent promotion had changed everything. With the new job came a transfer to Lagos, uprooting their family. Now, she was here, in a city that moved too fast, in a school where she knew no one. She adjusted her glasses, a nervous habit, before smoothing her neatly braided hair. Unlike her father, who carried himself with effortless confidence, Toyosi had always been shy, preferring to blend into the background rather than stand out. Inside, the school buzzed with activity. Girls walked in groups, chatting and laughing as they made their way to class. The scent of freshly baked bread wafted from the school kitchen, mixing with the crispness of freshly laundered uniforms. A group of students rehearsed lines from a play in the courtyard, while others flipped through their textbooks beneath a large almond tree. The entire compound was alive with the hum of youthful energy, the sound of hurried footsteps echoing off the tiled hallways. Toyosi barely had time to take in her surroundings before she collided with someone. Books stumbled from her grasp, hitting the ground with a thud. "Watch where you're going," a cold voice snapped. Toyosi blinked up at the girl before her. She had dark skin like hers, and her black braids cascaded down her back neatly. Even if Toyosi hadn't heard the name before, she could tell by the way the other students suddenly hushed that this girl was someone important. "I'm so sorry," Toyosi mumbled as she hurried to pick up her books. She glanced at the girl, recognition dawning. "You're..." "The name's Temi," she interrupted coolly. Temilola, whose name meant "mine is wealth," seemed to carry her identity with pride. The meaning echoed in Toyosi's mind as she heard it whispered in the hallways. From the way Temi carried herself, it was clear she believed every bit of it. With each step, she moved with an air of superiority, as though her name alone granted her entitlement. Two girls flanked her like loyal bodyguards, their smirks sharp and mocking, making Toyosi feel even smaller, as if she were nothing more than a shadow in their presence. "Welcome to Rosewood," Temi continued, her smirk widening. "Let's hope you can keep up." With a flick of her wrist, she turned on her heel, her minions following close behind, their laughter echoing in the hallway. Toyosi exhaled slowly. So much for a good first impression. A soft voice interrupted her thoughts. "Don't mind them," someone said. Toyosi turned and met a pair of kind brown eyes. The girl before her had thick, black curls that framed her face, but as the sunlight streamed through the window, Toyosi noticed the strands gleamed with hints of brown. Unlike most of the students at Rosewood, she was light-skinned, and her presence carried an air of quiet strength. "I'm Amarachi," she said, offering a smile. Whose name meant the grace of God. Toyosi hesitated before replying. "I'm Toyosi." Amarachi grinned. "Nice to meet you, Toyosi. Come on, I'll show you around." They walked side by side through the halls, Toyosi soaking in everything Amarachi said. Unlike most of the students at Rosewood, Amarachi was Igbo, one of the few in the school. Temilola and her friends often mocked her for it, calling her Omo Igbo in condescending tones. But Amarachi didn't shrink under their words. She carried herself with quiet confidence. The warm glow of the evening sun filtered through the curtains as Toyosi and Amarachi sat cross-legged on the living room floor, laughter spilling between them. Textbooks lay open before them, but neither girl was paying much attention to their assignments. Amarachi had just finished telling a story about a mischievous tortoise from Igbo folklore, her voice animated as she mimicked the characters, making Toyosi giggle. Toyosi's mother watched from the kitchen with a fond smile, pleased to see her daughter slowly adjusting to life in Lagos. She had worried about the move, about Toyosi finding her place, but seeing her like this, happy, at ease, made her heart swell with relief. The front door creaked open, and Toyosi's father stepped inside, setting his briefcase down with a quiet thud. His eyes landed on the two girls, and just for a moment, he observed them in silence. Then his expression stiffened. Toyosi straightened up. "Daddy, you're home," she said with a bright smile. "I want you to meet my friend. This is Amarachi." Amarachi stood up politely and offered a small, respectful bow. "Good evening, sir." Toyosi's father nodded stiffly. "Good evening," he responded, his tone neutral but guarded. His gaze lingered on Amarachi for a moment before he turned to his daughter. "Toyosi, a word. In private." Toyosi exchanged a nervous glance with Amarachi before following her father into his study. He shut the door behind them, and the air in the small room suddenly felt heavier. Her father sighed, rubbing his temple as if trying to gather his thoughts. "So, you're friends with Igbo people now?" he asked, his tone measured but unmistakably disapproving. Toyosi swallowed. "Amarachi is my friend." His jaw tightened. "I had an Igbo friend once. We were close, like brothers. But he betrayed me in a way I can never forget." His voice was low, tinged with something heavy, pain, perhaps, or resentment long buried but never truly gone. "I will not have my daughter making the same mistake." Toyosi felt her chest tighten. "But Daddy, Amarachi isn't like that. She's kind, she's—" "It does not matter," he cut in sharply. "Blood will always speak. You are Yoruba. You should surround yourself with those who understand our ways, our values. Not outsiders." Toyosi bit her lip, struggling to find the right words. Her father had always been her hero, the man whose wisdom she trusted without question. But this didn't feel right. Amarachi had shown her nothing but kindness. How could her tribe, her name, erase that? She wanted to protest, to tell him that people were more than their past, more than the grudges history carried. But she knew better than to argue with her father when his mind was set. Instead, she lowered her gaze and nodded slowly. "Yes, Daddy." Her father studied her for a moment before nodding in approval. "Good girl. Now, go back to your studies." Toyosi turned and walked out of the study, her heart heavy with unspoken words. As she stepped back into the living room, Amarachi looked up, concern flickering in her eyes. "Everything okay?" she asked softly. Toyosi forced a small smile. "Yeah," she lied. "Let's finish our work." But even as they returned to their books, her father's words echoed in her mind, casting a shadow over the warmth of their friendship. Her father's prejudice had deep roots. Years ago, when he was a young man, he had trusted an Igbo friend named Uche. They had been as close as brothers, until Uche betrayed him. They had started a business together, pooling their savings, but at the last minute, Uche had taken all the money and disappeared. The loss had been devastating, and since then, Toyosi's father had vowed never to trust an Igbo person again. Later that night, in the quiet of her room, Toyosi knelt beside her bed, clasping her hands together. "God, please touch Daddy's heart," she whispered. "Let him see Amarachi the way I do. Despite her father's warning, Toyosi continued to spend time with Amarachi at their all-girls private school. Their friendship flourished in secret, growing stronger with every shared moment. During lunch breaks, they sat together under the large almond tree at the far end of the schoolyard, swapping stories about their families and traditions. After school, they worked on assignments together in the library, sometimes sneaking in hushed conversations about their dreams. Toyosi wanted to become a writer, while Amarachi dreamed of being a doctor. They spoke about traveling to different parts of Nigeria, seeing places they had only read about in textbooks. But not everyone was pleased with their friendship. Temilola, who had already made it clear that she saw Toyosi as beneath her, now turned her attention toward Amarachi. Amarachi had known Temilola long before Toyosi arrived. From the moment Toyosi befriended her, she had warned her about Temilola's cruelty. "She thinks she owns this school," Amarachi had said once, rolling her eyes. "Just ignore her." Temilola's bullying intensified. She made snide remarks in class, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "Toyosi, I didn't know you were the charity type," she said one day, eyes flickering toward Amarachi. "How noble of you." The girls around her tittered. At lunch, she and her friends would take the table near Toyosi and Amarachi, talking just loud enough to be heard. "Some people don't belong here," Temilola would say, her voice laced with mock concern. "It's sad, really." One afternoon, as Toyosi and Amarachi made their way to the library, Temilola and her entourage blocked the hallway. "I hear Igbo girls are quite resourceful," Temilola mused, tilting her head. "Always finding ways to take what isn't theirs." Amarachi let out a sharp breath, her patience visibly thinning. "Move, Temilola," she said firmly. Temilola smirked. "Oh, you're feeling bold today, aren't you?" She stepped aside dramatically, but just as Amarachi moved past her, she stuck out her foot. Amarachi tripped, her books flying. The hallway burst into laughter as she scrambled to pick them up. Toyosi knelt beside her, fury burning in her chest. "Ignore them," she whispered. Temilola folded her arms, watching them with amusement. "Be careful, Toyosi," she said lightly. "People might start thinking you're one of them." Despite the taunts, Toyosi and Amarachi stood by each other. They whispered encouragements, promising that no matter what, they wouldn't let Temilola break them. But even as they clung to their friendship, the unspoken fear lingered. How long before Temilola's bullying became more than just words?
On this journey and let your dreams steer. What your dreams steer.